So, today I want to talk about unions showing solidarity with the protesters in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The groups and unions that I'm about to talk about have refused to take the side of the state and have ignored the state's demands and instead come out in favor of the people and BLM protesters. These are the same protesters who have come out in response to the trial of Derek Chauvin and most recently in response to the killing of Dante Wright. And before I delve into all of this and how the unions are supporting these protesters, I want to emphasize first and foremost that I have found all of this information from left-wing sources and Twitter, as I have found no recognition of this side of the story from any mainstream news outlets. The angle that I'm about to share, far from selling the fear of our fellow people, shows a solidarity of people coming together with a common cause against the state. And I imagine that this is far more difficult to sell for many news outlets than the idea of people being angry and all the things that they want to share in terms of fear and anguish. So with that said, I want to first talk about the Minneapolis Transit Union, who was asked to come out and send buses to assist the police in mass arrests. From what I've heard, one bus driver was actually called down to the scene of a protest, and once the driver found out about why he was summoned by police, this particular driver chose to leave the scene and not help or assist the police. And I'm under the impression that this type of thing actually happened previously during the summer after the killing of George Floyd. So with that said, I want to show you the position and statement of the local union, ATU Local 1005. So here we have that statement, and I'm going to read this to you. A traffic stop should never be a death sentence. Members of Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1005 stand in solidarity with the movement seeking justice for Dante Wright. On Tuesday night in Brooklyn Center, an ATU member realized that his bus had been called out to transport arrested protesters. He refused and turned the bus around, as was his right. ATU Local 1005 applauds our members' stand and continues to support our members in the struggle for Black Lives Matter. That is amazing and that is important. This bus driver not only did the right thing, but the union that represents him backed him up, and for a good cause, because Black Lives Matter is important. And the fact that that statement is still a political idea, that we can't just come out and accept that, is still an issue. Black lives do matter and need to continue to matter in this country. And the police department, no matter what they keep trying to do, is not going to prove anything but the fact that Black Lives Matter as more and more people come out in solidarity towards all of the atrocities they keep committing towards Black people and Black lives. But continuing to read the statement, Metro Transit has stated several times that it would not ask our drivers to supply arrest buses. In fact, Metro Transit previously agreed not to supply arrestee buses in collaboration with the Minneapolis Police Department during the trial of Derek Chauvin. All ATU members have the right to refuse unsafe work. Our members' right to refuse includes the right to refuse to collaborate with or transport law enforcement in other jurisdictions beyond Minneapolis. We continue to stand in solidarity with our members as we did last summer during the George Floyd uprising, when our members refused to transport young arrested protesters who are justifiably angered at the injustice of racism, oppression, and violence, of the inequality inherent in the system we live under. That is amazing and important, because it is this kind of solidarity that will keep us united against the way the state wants to turn us against each other, the way that media outlets constantly are pushing fear, and the way that the police departments keep attacking people who are not supposed to be attacked. If they're arrested, fine, they're supposed to go to a court of law, and there's a whole set of problems with the law itself. But the cops are not supposed to be judge, jury, and executioner, and they need to be held accountable. As a matter of fact, we need to start thinking seriously about abolishing them, as they keep coming out and defending their actions, and they keep committing more and more heinous acts against not just adults, but children. And we need to start standing in solidarity against that kind of behavior because there is no more justification for it. We can do without that. We can do better. Now, the second group that I want to talk about is actually not a specific union, but it is a group of people who represent multiple unions who came out to a labor hall to ask the National Guard to leave. The National Guard had come in and occupied this labor hall, and the local members went against curfew and came out and stopped them. So what happened is, according to Left Voice, the rank-and-file union members, community activists, and various union staff members assembled at the Labor Center, the St. Paul Labor Center, Wednesday night and found more than 15 armored vehicles and 50 National Guard troops that had been given the keys to the Central Union facility. Workers from CWA, MNA, UBC, and other locals informed these soldiers that union members support the communities harmed by police violence and racism, and that the labor center was off limits to armed forces participating in repressing protests across the Twin Cities. That's fantastic and amazing that these union members came out against the National Guard who had been quartered in their facility. Now, mind you, quartering soldiers is actually illegal, so they were forced to leave when they were told to, because even if they had been granted any sort of permission, the minute that consent is removed, they must leave the facility. The Third Amendment protects this, and that is one of the reasons that the amendments to the Constitution are still valid and important, and they should be upheld as really important values and aspects of the American society. If nothing else, they represent the rights of the people and why and how we are going to be able to protect ourselves from this type of occupation. Now, the National Guard, again, has no right to stay and be quartered without the consent of the labor union. Now, supposedly they did get a key, but breaking the imposed curfew, union members assembled at the hall Wednesday night and demanded the immediate exit of the troops. However, it was shown that somebody from the Labor Federation had given them the key to the hall. After union members made a series of phone calls to the individual who handed them the key, he arrived at the scene and entered into conversations with the troops in the union hall. The workers then tried to speak with Guard members, expressing understanding of the soldiers' working-class backgrounds and orders, but imploring them to break rank, to join the anti-racist movement sparked by the murders of Black people by the police. Now, I'd love to tell you that this story ended with the National Guard realizing their position was wrong, breaking rank and file, and deciding to join with the protesters and joining these members of the unions and doing the right thing. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. They left. Within 1 hour, the armored vehicles were loaded up and all of the soldiers exited the ground of the labor center. Now, unions and the National Guard have a long, strenuous history of being on the opposite side of these types of struggles. And there's probably no love lost for the National Guard in this case. But the fact that these union members showed enough compassion and empathy to try to talk to the members of the National Guard, to tell them that we are part of the same struggle, that most of them probably come from a working class background themselves, and that we could unite on this, is something really valid and important, because there's no reason the National Guard, or even the police for that matter, should be on this side of the conflict that they're on. They are on this side effectively of enforcing the power of the state, whereas these union members have come on the side of people, specifically Black lives, to defend human existence and human rights. And the National Guard could have come out in solidarity, and it was a worthwhile endeavor to try to reach out to them in that moment. But that said, they still had no right to be there. They had no right to quarter themselves and to use that facility as a tool and operation facility to start to attack protesters, because that is why they were there. If the Derek Chauvin trial goes south and sour in the way that it is quite expected to go, they would be right on the scene and ready for it. And with the protest now for Daunte Wright, they are there. They are able to break up protests. But if they don't have a facility to camp out in, they don't have a place they can rest their heads and set up in, then they don't have the ability to be as rested, as good, and as on the scene as they possibly could be by occupying this labor hall. So people coming out and breaking the curfew to stop this is something that will help and have a tangible effect on the lives of protesters. And that, to me, is something that we need to remember in solidarity. We need to focus on solidarity like this. Now, the action of the union members against the National Guard and their repression of Black Lives Matter movement demonstrates that organized labor is critical and powerful force and must side with working class people rising up against systemic racism and not on the side of police repression. So, all of this is really important. And the truth of all of this is that the state needs us to be compliant if they are to continue to carry out these types of atrocities. They need us to carry out actions of complicity, to report as if we are fearful, to act as if everything is wrong, to fear the protesters, to fear their message, and to come out in favor and on the side of the police and the National Guard, and to continue to follow suit in all of these different ways to justify their position and carry out their specific brand and show here. But can you imagine if we all just stopped supporting these institutions? If we all just came out in support of each other and defended these protesters collectively across the country? What power would they have? What power would the state institutions have to enforce anything that against something like a general strike? Or a massive protest in which we proclaim that the streets were our streets and that they belong to the people. Solidarity and working together and recognizing our mutual humanity, even the humanity of the people who want to hurt us, by trying to appeal to their better half, their better sides, and to try to say to them, hey, you're part of the working class struggle too, is probably the most wonderful and amazing thing that we can try to do as we try to overcome. And maybe one day the National Guard and the police will take note of the things that we're trying to do and take the side of the people and not the state. So with that said, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and bell for notification. You can follow me on Twitter and check out my Discord in the description down below. My name is Anarchist Tara. Solidarity with Black Lives Matter, solidarity with the people, and I hope you enjoyed watching.